All right, here we are for another biology video. As you can see, we're going to continue with the idea of fossils in this video, just like we finished up in the last video in the last assignment by looking at the big spreadsheet of all those fossils. The point of looking at all those fossils was so you can see that one, there are just a ton of fossil evidence out there, but also so that you could see the patterns in the fossils. But now we want to look more closely at fossils and see how we actually use the fossils that we have to create something called an evolutionary history. So let's start with this thing, right? One of the things about the theory of natural selection is that it says that everything is related and has a common ancestor. So we should be able to take any organism and compare it to others to figure out how it fits in with the theory of evolution. So here we have an animal that most people call a killer whale. However, killer whales have never been documented killing any humans. They do kill seals, of course. That's their job, is to like kill, they're predators and they need to eat, so they kill seals. But they got a name killer whale because they're scary looking. But killer whales are actually really friendly towards humans because they're pretty smart and they know that humans are not necessarily a threat to them. In fact, the only times that killer whales have ever been documented hurting a human was when the killer whale was in captivity. It was in a zoo or something, right? And they're smart enough to know that it doesn't want to be there, and they lash out at the people who are keeping them there. So killer whale, maybe not a killer, but is it even a whale, right? You might know that a killer whale has another name called orca, right? And so what we want to do is to compare the orca to some other similar organisms to see where does it fit in. And so here I have information about three marine animals: the humpback whale, the killer whale, and then the bottlenose dolphin. Now, we have all these, people have made classification systems where we look at the similarities and differences between the different animals and we group them based on their similarities. And so the kingdom is the biggest group. These things are all part of the animal kingdom. But there are other kingdoms, like the plant kingdom, the fungus kingdom, and there are two different bacteria kingdoms. Within the animal kingdom, though, there are lots of different groups, right? And so one group that's within the animal kingdom, that's not what I wanted to do at all, is the chordates, which these are the ones that have a backbone, right? So not all animals, though, have a backbone. There are animals like insects, lobsters, worms. They don't have a backbone, so they don't go into this group. This group would be only animals with backbones. But out of that group, there's even more groups. Animals with backbones could mean fish, could mean amphibians, could mean reptiles, could mean birds, or it could mean mammals. All these three animals are mammals. But then inside the mammals, there are even smaller groups, right? There are the carnivores, like we looked at in the last video, right? Like there's the lion, or the cat group, the dog group, the weasel group. They all came from that ancient civet kind of organism, right? Those are the carnivores. There's also the rodent group and the primate group, and there's a bunch of different groups inside of the mammal group. These all fit in a group called cetacea, and this means the water group. But here's where it changes. All four of these are all the same. But then when you look at the next one, the order and the family, they start to be different, right? So what is it that separates these groups? And the big thing is this one right here. The root here that says daunt, that means tooth, like as an orthodontist, right? So a humpback whale does not have teeth. It has something called baleen, whereas the dolphin has teeth, and so does the killer whale. The killer whale doesn't have the same traits as the humpback whale, right? In fact, if you look at the next thing, the family, over here you have the baleen family. Those are the ones that have the baleen in their mouths. And then you have this group, which is basically just means the dolphin group. The killer whale is literally in the dolphin group, right? Before I go real quick, I just want to point out that there are two other groups, the genus and species. Species is the most specific. That's why it's called species. Genus is usually what we would call the type, right? And so genus here, Megoptera, just means big whale, basically. And there's a bunch of different big whales. So there's the Megoptera novangulae, which is the humpback whale, but there are other whales like the blue whale that are in the same genus but in a different species. Humans, our genus is Homo. There's only one species of people now called Homo sapiens, of course, but in the past there have been other versions like Homo neanderthalensis. Yeah, neanderthalensis. Neanderthals go in the human group, but they are different species of human. In any case, you'll see scientific names here and there, and that's where the scientific names come from. But in any case, the killer whale is not a whale, it's a dolphin. Here is a different kind of graphic that shows how everything is related. It shows that way back here, there was a common ancestor of the whales, and it split into two groups, right? Speciation. One group went off to become the Mysticeti, the ones without teeth. These are the ones that kept their teeth, because teeth, of course, it's more normal to have teeth and not to not have teeth. So the Odontoceti, they split off here. And then you can see there's a bunch of splits. The sperm whale is probably a lot like what this original ancestor looked like somewhere back here, right? Because it's a big whale, just like all these other ones, but they have teeth, which the other ones don't. So the sperm whale is probably the beginning. And then a group split off to become beaked whales. Those are a little smaller. Then a group split off from that group to become the river dolphins. A group split off from that group to be the other river dolphins. And then you finally get to the oceanic dolphins right here, which of course they use the killer whale as a picture of the dolphin, right? They didn't even show a bottlenose dolphin. So this is all done by looking at similarities in their traits, like do they have teeth or not, and then looking at fossils, which we'll get to soon. Before I leave this slide, though, I do want to point out that although I just made a big point that killer whales are not whales or dolphins, but you might also notice that dolphins evolved from the whale group. So technically, all dolphins are a type of whale. Just like your thumb is a type of finger, but not all fingers are thumbs. All dolphins are whales, but not all whales are dolphins. That's not going to be on a test, but it is interesting the way that all works out. Now, what are we going to do with this, right? So that image that you saw is called a phylogeny. It shows evolutionary relationships, like this one, again, for the carnivores. First off, you have lots of branching points that show common ancestors, right? So here's the common ancestor of all of them. That led to the three different groups, right? Now, common ancestors should have shared characteristics, which means that the reason we group these together is because they seem the same. Or in this case, we're going to group these together over on this other diagram because they have hair, right? And if these two both have hair, then they should have a common ancestor that also has hair, right? Species that are more similar have a more recent ancestor. Back over to the carnivore one, the dog and the wolf split very recently, so they're super similar to the point where you might even know that some dogs, maybe even all dogs, can reproduce with wolves because they're actually really similar. But dogs and cats are not that similar because their ancestor is much farther back than that of the two different types of dogs, right? And so this is all, again, based on the idea that you had to have gotten your traits from your ancestors, right? And so species that are more different have distant ancestors. Species that are similar have recent ancestors. All of the descendants should have the same basic traits as the past, but with modifications. So here on this one, these are all vertebrates. Every single one of these has a backbone. But the shark doesn't have bones. They have cartilage skeletons. So everything here is similar to a shark, except they have bones plus other things. The amphibians have 4 limbs that the fish don't have, right? But the amphibians do have bony skeletons, right? So they got their skeleton from the fish, but then they evolved to have limbs. Then the limbs eventually evolved into reptiles and birds, and then the mammal group split off from that there, right? But the idea is that if you use your similar characteristics to group things together and to see how they fit. Now, this kind of thing, you can do that just by looking at similarities, right? This diagram doesn't show time, but this one does. This one shows literally where everyone came from, right? In this picture, it makes it look like rodents and rabbits and the primates came from each other, which they kind of did, but that's not exactly true. And again, crocodiles and birds, these kind of came from each other, but not exactly. This one shows exactly how everything is related. And so we're going to end up making one that's a little bit more like this soon, but not yet. Because first we have to go through this kind of thing, right? And so here's the way that it kind of has worked in science before, in that the first people that were learning about evolution, they just grouped things by looking at them. Here we have a bunch of different organisms, which I'm actually going to get rid of off my screen for just a second here, because I want to show a different kind of screen. Yes, this is how I want to show the screen. Go away. There we go. Here we are. Oh, that's the slide that had that on there. So that's awesome. Let's make that go away. So here we have these things. And if we were in class, what I would be doing is having you group these together based on what they look like, right? And so we'll start with the easy ones. The wolf goes with the dog, right? Now, you probably just knew that wolves and dogs go together, not just because I told you on a previous slide, but you just knew that because you've been on the planet for a while and you've learned things. But wolves and dogs look very similar, so they go together, just like tigers and cheetahs go together. They're both cats, but they also have similar traits. The chimp looks a lot like the monkeys, although the chimp is an ape. These are monkeys. That's chimp. Difference. And then, of course, the human is actually a type of ape, so that goes over here, right? And this is just based on the fact that this guy looks a lot like this guy. And they all kind of look the same. Again, just relative hairiness mostly is the difference. So those all go into a group. The camel, maybe you don't know which one the camel goes with, but it has 4 legs and it eats plants, and so does a cow. So we're going to go with that one. We have the crocodile and we have the turtle. Those go together. Hopefully you know those go together because they're reptiles, but also because they have the same scaly skin. On the inside, they have the same kind of hearts and things like that. Of course, you can't see that here, but if we were doing this in real life, and what people did in the past is they would just dissect one to see what was inside of it. Now we got a rainbow trout here that goes with the shark. And again, they're both fish, but also they have the same fins and traits and stuff like that. But so is the dolphin. And this is the one that usually in class will get a lot of discussion going, because a dolphin has fins just like the fish. But the dolphin is a mammal like we were just talking about. So how could the mammal go in the fish group? It doesn't go in the fish group. And I wouldn't do, unless you learned this before, you'd have no way of knowing this, but the dolphin actually goes with the cows, closer to the camel than a cow, actually. We'll get that in a different video. But here I have made a group, a classification system, right? I have grouped them by their traits. What I can then do is make an official like diagram about this kind of thing, right? And so here I have this data table where on the bottom I put all the different species in individual boxes. I grouped them together though, based on their looks. I happen to know what made them different though. So like the wolf and the dog, they're in the canine group, they're the dog group. The tiger and cheetah are in the cat group. But cats and canines are types of carnivores. So they all go in the carnivore group, right? And then these are all versions of mammals, so they all go in the mammal group, of course, too, right? Humans and chimps are apes. Monkeys are not. But apes and monkeys are types of primates. Cows and camels are land herbivores. Dolphins, not so much. Although a dolphin isn't even an herbivore. I know it says herbivore there, but I should have changed that a long time ago. But it's hard to put the dolphin in there because it's a weird one. But my point here is that all these are all different types of mammals, right? And so you have this classification system where you have big groups at the top and then smaller groups and the smaller groups until you get to the smallest group you can have, right? So what you're going to do is come to this assignment. All right, so I messed up on the other video. And so here's the part where I explain how to do the assignment. When you open up your document, it should look like this. And I had to, it was hard to fit it all on the slides. So I would go down and make sure that the speaker notes part is all the way down at the bottom of the screen, so that you have the most area to see, the biggest area to see. And then up here where it says Zoom, this is going to be our friend here and there, right? And so it might start on 100, it might start on the fit, right? So if it's on the fit, you can see the whole slide, but on Zoom, you'll be able to see more detail, right? And so the first 2 slides are what I was showing in the last video, where we have all these different organisms and they all get grouped together based on their characteristics. And so I kept that slide on here just to remind you of how that works. Here's the same, what do you call it? data table to show the classification system. It got a little bit weird here because of I had to rotate the slide. So if you need help, like you could just expand it like so. But that's just for your reference, because what you're going to do is to look at these things, the Caminalcules. These are the imaginary species that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to zoom in here to the 100%. And these, how many, there are 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 or so, 14 species represent the living versions of these things, right? Don't make any assumptions about what they are. They're just these little alien things that we're going to use. The numbers are their names, which you're going to need to know later, right? So first, what you're going to do is to make a classification system similar to how you did before, or how I showed you on the last video. I'm going to move this to the back real fast. And so what that means is you're going to take these and you're going to group the ones that are similar, right? I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to tell you how many groups to make, right? But when you look at their anatomical features, and you keep in mind that if you have similar features, then you probably have a common ancestor, then the groups will form. And then in this space underneath, you're going to make a table similar to how I made this one here, right? So that's why I left this here, so you can see exactly how I did mine. And then you can kind of recreate it here, but for these. Now keep in mind on some of these, like where it says canine and cat and ape and primate, you don't know that about these species. So just name the groups based on what you can see, like flat tail thing or something like that, right? Like name the groups based off that. So that's what first thing that you want to do is to make your preliminary classification system based on what you can see. Then on slide 7, you're going to get all these fossils, right? And so let's see if I did this one right. Nope, I didn't. So I'll fix that now. These fossils go all the way back to 19 million years. So you'll notice that there's 2 numbers on here. There's the regular number, which is the name of the species, and then in parentheses is the age. And that's all on this slide right here. It tells you all these kinds of things. So it's just in case you need to go look for the instructions. It's right there on slide number 6, right? And so what you're going to do is take this big sheet, and here's where I want to kind of show you, right? Like we would be doing this on a big poster paper if we were in the classroom. And so this is like a timeline. And millions of years ago, and so 0 millions of years ago, that's present, and then all the way back to 19 million years ago, right? And so this is kind of the grid that you're going to put the fossils on. So you're going to come over here, and here I'm going to go back to 100%, and I put them in order for you. Usually you don't get this, it's all scrambled when you do it in person, but I don't want to waste your time. So you're going to probably cut this one. I'm going to go to the first one. It's 19 million years old, and I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to put it onto the slide here, onto slide 8. And I'm going to put it down at the bottom for 19 million years, right? Because that's the fossil that existed 19 million years ago. Then I'm going to go find the next ones. The next ones, there's 2 of them that you can see that are from 18 million years. So I'm going to cut the 18 million years, and I'm going to paste it. Oops, I just totally messed up my thing. And so I think I totally just jacked this up. So I'm going to undo a bunch of things. There we go. I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to paste it. All right, so that's an 18 million years. So I'm going to put it on the 18 line. There's another one that's 18 million. So I'll go back to my slide here, and I cut that one. I'm cutting them so that I don't accidentally repeat any, right? Because if I just copy them and leave the other copy on the original slide, then I won't know where I'm at, right? And so now I have both these 18 million years, and I know that they had to have come from the 19 million year old fossil. And so I'm going to draw a line connecting these. And I'm going to draw another line here to connect those, right? Because this is the common ancestor for these 2 species, right? Now, I'm not going to do a lot of them for you, but I'll show you now that there's a bunch of 17s, right? And so this is the next 17, and I'm going to cut it. And now I have to put it on the 17 line. But where does it go on the 17 line? Does it come from this one right here, or does it come from this one right here, right? You have to decide where it's going to go. And in this case, I'm going to say that it comes from this one because they have a similar head. This guy has the flat head with the eyeballs that are starting to show up, but this one over here has the flat head just like this other guy's a flat head. And then I put the line from there to there, and I am now making my my evolutionary history, right? So you're going to go through all of the fossils and you're going to put them on the correct line, and you're going to go from the bottom up one at a time. And as you put them on there, you want to connect them. Now you can always, sometimes you get the wrong idea and you have to go back and fix things, but that's okay because again, like this is just really easy to fix your mistakes on the Google Slides. You just take away the shapes and stuff like that, right? Now, one last hint that I do want to give you is that students get this idea that you have to go in the, like from 19 to 18 to 17, and the next one should be 16, and the next one should be 15. Let's just say this is not the right one, right? But let's just say I find this one, and this one says it goes on the 10 line, right? It is possible that you could have a line that goes all the way down to here, right? It doesn't have to go from 10 back to 11, back to 12, right? It could go from 10 all the way to 18. This is something that I kind of have mentioned already, that maybe there's just fossils that have been missing, or maybe it just didn't change very much or something like that. All right, so again, that isn't one of the answers, so I'm not gonna leave that right there. But that's the idea, that it could happen that way, depending on the, of course, what's going on up here. Now, once you get your big evolutionary tree, then I would put it back to here so you can see the whole thing. So you're going to see the whole big pattern kind of come out. Now, as you're doing this, maybe I try to make them the size that I think that they will work, but you can always change the sizes of the pictures and things like that. You can't change the size of the grid, but you can change the size of the pictures if you need more space. But you'll get this big evolutionary tree, and then you have these questions to answer based on the numbers and the patterns of the speciation that you are going to see, right? And so the, yeah, that should be it. I'm trying to think about if at the last minute, if there's anything I didn't say, but I think that's it. So if there are any questions, of course, let me know. Come to office hours, but you should have everything you need now to do a fossil, use fossils to create an evolutionary history.